Blog Talk Radio.
Live from Washington, D.C., it's Quintessential Listening, Poetry Online Radio. QLPOR, as it's widely known, features a bevy of poets, spoken word artists, and live poetry readings with best-selling authors. Your host is Dr. Michael Anthony Ingram.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the program. Tonight, I'm joined by one of my all-time favorite poets, Linda Imbler. Linda's poetry is well-crafted and touches the heart. It is also extremely thoughtful, clever, and witty. I could go on and on, to be quite honest. Her new book is titled Spica's Frequency, which has been described as full of splendid images that will inspire and remind you why it's so great to be alive. There are also in the book some soulful images to which many, many people can relate. Welcome, Linda Imbler. Hello, Linda.
Hello, Michael. Good to talk to you again. This is exciting.
Yes, it is. It's always, you're welcome on this program, as you know, anytime, and I'm glad you're back with me. So what I'd like to share with the listeners is that tonight's program will be slightly different. If you've been listening for a while, you know that I enjoy many, M-I-N-I, poetry concerts. Linda will share her work in 5 sets. As usual, I will ask a few questions between each set. So let's begin this journey together. Linda, you're on.
Okay, you want me to go ahead and get started on my first set? Okay, here we go. All right.
Oh, actually, no, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't start your first set yet. You know I asked questions. I forgot. I want you to tell me, my friend, about Spica's Frequency.
Okay, Spica's Frequency is... It's divided into 2 sections. I tend to put sections in my poetry. So the first section is reflections on the here and now, and the second section is the there and then. Now, the here and now is divided into some other parts, but it's basically just your regular, poetry about just regular stuff. The there and then portion is more metaphysical. There's some spiritual things in there, and there's some esoteric types of poems in there, some science fiction-y types of things.
All right. Why did you decide to write this particular book?
I wrote that particular book because I tended to have I had a lot of poetry in both camps. I had a lot of things that were just regular sorts of things that people would write about, and then I had some things that were just kind of the what ifs. I'm really big into what ifs, and so those are a lot of the what if types of things. What if this happened, and what if this happened, and that's where you kind of get to the metaphysical and some of those other things.
All right. You know, what I'd like to know, before I ask you a question about your book's cover, I want to go back in time. When you think about the first poem that you put together, that you wrote, how does the message differ than your work today, or your first poems?
Okay. Well, my first poem was not that different than the way I write today. My first poem that I wrote was called Hands. And it was a poem that I wrote after I went to the funeral of a friend of mine, and she looked really good in her coffin, except for the hands. You know, they've got those flat fingers on the hands. And so I wrote a poem about that. That was just a reaction to what I saw and how I felt. My second poem was called Tomb. And it was based, I'm a big crossword puzzle fan, and I ran across the word lambent, and I didn't know what it meant, so I looked it up, and it was a flickering flame, and I thought, that's kind of interesting. And I thought, so I started thinking about things that flicker. Anyway, long story short, it turned out to be a poem about tombs from starting with the Taj Mahal and going down to unmarked graves and kind of going, spiraling down into what are considered less important graves, at least in terms of majesticness. And but then there's a little blurb at the end, and it talks about a small grotto with a rock rolled back, and that's the most majestic of all. And of course, that's Christ's tomb. So that's kind of how I put it together. It was fun to write. It was very interesting, but I did get the word Lambent in there. That was a big deal.
All right. Very nice, very nice. As I've had an opportunity to look at your books, especially the cover of it, tell us about the process for coming up with the cover.
Well, my husband and I are big night view people, and Spica is one of our guide stars. Arcturus is one, and Spica is another one. We have a telescope, and it's computerized, and you program in where you want it to, kind of the area you want it to go in. So in order to make it, to moderate it and get it to work right, you have to find a couple of guide stars. And I just thought Spica was a really cool name for a star. So, that's the one that and I thought, well, frequency's more about, that kind of goes into that whole thing about people's mood and their emotions and everything. You think of people's frequency in terms of, how they act and how they feel. So it kind of tied it together that way. So then I found the picture, and it looked like, a space sort of thing, a star or something coming up over it. And I just thought it looked cool. That's what I did.
All right. And it does. I like it. You've written a number of books, my friend. You've written a number of books.
Uh-huh.
So do you try to be original in each book, or do you deliver what the readers want because you've got a lot of fans?
I write for me. I read for other people, but I write for me. My writing process is and always has been, number one, it's my way to make sense of the world as I understand the world. I can only put my feet in other people's shoes so much. I know what I believe and what I think and how I feel. So my sense of how I lay things out and how I perceive things is my own individual. So that's how I do it.
All right. Very nice. Very nice. I mean, it's a very honest way to do it, writing for yourself. So it's time for us to hear your work. Linda, you're on.
Okay. Can I tell you one more thing? I do have another book coming out real quickly, okay? It's called Rhythms Told, and it's going to be published by Soma Publishing this fall. I won't tell you too much more about it because we'll get back on the radio and we'll go back and talk.
You'll be back. You'll be back.
Talk about it. Yeah,
we'll talk about it.
I will. But I do have three.
All right.
It's a book of kind of some shorter poems, and I'm going to read three of those first. The first one is called Mortal. It's a sunset veranda, river valley, and hills beyond. A jumble of painted and carved expressions, lyrical statements, melted into a screen of trees. We must sharpen our understanding, develop sympathetic magic as we chronicle our dreams and ideals, sharply debate on the success of things accomplished, realizing that while we may create verandas, we will never create sunsets. Okay, the next one is called Cry. Burn these chains, plant my garden without sin, invent the future without poisoning the air, put betrayal beyond reach, no damnation laid at your feet. Legend will regard us as the ones whose weary tears were shed for the grace of the world. And the last one's very short. It's called Mates. He's classical. I'm rock and roll. We're both Tolkien. I guess the universe can play matchmaker and get it right the first time. Okay, so those are three from Rhythms Told, which will be published by Soma. And then I have a couple that are kind of older ones that are kind of neat. I thought I'd do my most modern ones, and then go back and, do some real oldie moldies. Is that okay? Michael? Michael?
I'm here. I'm here. Linda? Good people, when there are technical problems, we on this particular show roll with the punches. So I'd like you to hold on for a second, and hopefully we'll be right back. Linda?
Yes. I am so sorry.
Technical problems. Always technical problems. Always.
Okay.
But you're back.
That's fine.
And I'm back.
At least I didn't hang up on you. Okay, so I don't know how much you heard. Did you hear the 3 poems, and then, or did
I cut
out?
I heard the first 3. I'm waiting to hear the second
2. Okay. You're waiting to hear the oldie moldies. Okay, this one's called "What Old Portraits on Dusty Bookshelves, Where Dire Warnings Rule, Bad Beliefs Disabused, Good Sense Overruled. We on the upswing, their memories slipshod, best advice not taken, their cautioning declarations. We become roped in, doubtlessly shaken. We skip along sidewalks, ignoring the roadblocks, pinning us in to taste sin. We, like shipwrecks that had been, from back when fires were set near rocks to draw prey in. Weren't those ancient tales just meant to shock? Walking those burning sidewalks now on feet unshod tells us the hindsight of those portraits were not just facade. And what they wished to tell, their retrospect alarm bells, delivered from their watchfulness and their cautiousness, we should heed. And then the next one is called Maud's Dancing. This one was fun to write because you and I are old enough to remember, the whole, British invasion and, all that kind of business. And this may be lost on some of the younger people, but believe me, guys, that was a really cool time. It's called Maud's Dancing. Remember all the Maud clothes and everything back then, Michael?
Yes, I do. I don't want to remember, but I do.
I know.
I'm old, Linda. I'm old.
Yes, I know. I'm sorry. I nailed you on that one. I couldn't.
You really did. You did. I wasn't prepared. I was not prepared.
All right. I'm going to be old on this show, so are you.
Yes. All right. Let me stop. Let me be quiet. All right,
okay,
Linda.
This was called Maud's Dancing. Stripes, squares, planes, and angles. Lots of stripes, black pinstripes, but not sergeant stripes. Parallel lines and black and white squares, but no squares on the dance floor, undulating. Music from the speakers, blasting, pulsing electric vibes, and as they begin to move subtly, twist but don't shout, hands expressive, self-expression without judgment. Their own music, the Mauds. Their lives are all about passion and all about the thumping beat. Dance floors are so crowded with bodies, moving in place, eyes closed, experiencing rhythms heard with their unique ears. They weave and bounce but keep the attitude cool. Girls with hair with bangs, but not loud bangs of escalating war in some foreign land. Boys with hair grown to length, hanging over collars, sharp collars, for that will and that for some will be replaced with drab green. Clothes not funereal, surprisingly, not dull, checkerboard patterns dazzling the eye. Something so colorful about this dress, worn by kids who had yet to discover hip, those for whom video was all in the head. Okay, so that's the first set there.
All right.
Little ones and some oldies. Okay.
Oldies but goodies. I remember those things.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question, my friend.
Sure.
Let me ask you a question. Yeah. What I'd like to know from you as we continue our journey together, how do you develop your poems? If you can, with one of the pieces that you've recited, kind of guide us through the stages of that poem. How did you come up with it?
Okay, well, let's see. I think on Mob's Dancing, since that was such a fun one, I started out with describing the clothes, the stars, the squares, the planes, the angles, and all that. And then I kind of started messing around with words that would tie into, in other words, the black and white squares on the floor, but no squares on the dance floor, because back then if you were square, you wouldn't be a mod and get out there. There was some other thing, I described the hairstyles, and I described the sharp collars that for some will be replaced with drab green. Vietnam was going on back then, the Korean War and things like that. So that's where, you had some, so there was some juxtaposition in there. It's more of a descriptive poem, but I was able to tie some of the current social events into it, even though it was on a dance floor dancing. Yeah.
I want to know how long did it take you to craft that particular piece?
Oh, it probably took a couple of days to really go, probably 2 days to kind of lay it out, and then another day or 2 or 3 to kind of read and reread it and decide, I have to look at things. I have to say, okay, what did I say stupid, or did I? There's usually something. Yeah, well, that's how it works. And I thought, okay, now, and then I look for, am I repeating a lot of words? Now, of course, I repeated the word stripes a lot in that first 2 lines: stripes, squares, planes, and angles. Lots of stripes, flat pinstripes, but not sergeant stripes. And again, referring back to the war. So the stripes was on purpose there. I'm really careful with my work not to try and in the same poem repeat a word over and over again unless it has a purpose, unless it's meant to be part of the fun of what I'm doing. So that's
well, when you think about your writing in general, is a poem letting your guard down or building a wall? I guess that's just kind of a philosophical question, I would guess. What do you think about that?
That's a really good, that's an excellent question. I think that's a question you should be asking all your poets on there. I think if I were building a wall, I wouldn't be putting it out there in the first place. I understand the question, and I understand that I try and be as unguarded. But on the other hand, you are a little guarded about things. You don't want I don't want to go into all stupid stuff that happened when I was 12 or something like that. Because it's not. It may be a therapy session, but again, if I'm writing for therapy, that's not something that goes out to an audience. And I do have some pieces like that I've written just to kind of get things off my chest. Some things along the line of slam poetry types of things, but those aren't things that people really want to hear because they have their own problems. They don't really care, about mine, which is fine. I understand that. So I always try and keep it back to that making sense of the world. But that making sense of the world also involves making sense of something that happened or that I feel. So that's a really good question. You really need to ask everybody that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. One of the things I've always liked about your work is that I view it as being very accessible. I can understand it. And what I want to know from you, as you've read poetry yourself, how hard should you work at a poem to solve it or to read it? How hard should you work?
Oh, to read and interpret a poem? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
It depends on whether I'm interested in the subject or not. If I'm interested in the subject, I will spend a lot of time trying to analyze a poem. I'm not a writer by trade, though. I mean, this is something that I'd always decided I wanted to do since I was a kid. And I thought, okay, someday when I retire, I'm going to write poetry, and, finally got around to it. But, you just it really depends on the subject matter. If it's something that I'm looking at for a friend, I'll spend a lot of more time analyzing it and kind of deciding. But I try not to be really critical of people's work for several reasons. Poetry is very personal, regardless of whether you're writing for yourself or whether you're writing for an audience. You can usually tell the difference. You can usually tell that if somebody's writing for themselves or writing for other people. And, at least I can.
All right. So that piece about Vietnam and all those situations, I'm wondering if you had a chance to live in another era and write poetry, what would you choose? Which era?
Oh, well, I think if I had a chance to go back and have fun again, I'd go back to back to the mid and late 60s, or even I'd go back to the British invasion. I'd go back to when the Beatles landed in America. I'd go through that whole thing again. Yeah, seriously.
And wow, Linda, when the Beatles hit America, wow. Tell me more.
Well, well, they did land in America.
Yes.
Are you too young to remember that, Michael?
Yes. Well, actually, I don't. I'm not that old, Linda. But I just want to clarify. But I wouldn't mind going back to the old days of Motown and the Supremes and the Temptations. So I know what you're saying.
Oh, well,
I know what you're saying.
Too. Oh no, that was the 60s too. No, it wasn't just the Beatles. No. If you're talking about that time period, you're talking about Otis Redding, you're talking about James Brown, you're talking about Little Richard, you're talking about, you're getting to that whole, the Supremes, absolutely, the Savons, all that.
All right, the last question. We'll be here all night. When you think about going back, my friend, what would you tell your younger writing self, or whenever you started writing poetry, what would you tell that person, your younger writing self?
I would say to really look around you and see what's going on more than I was. I was aware of a lot of things, but a lot of things I didn't. I wasn't aware of. I think if you want to understand the world, you need to read, you need to look at history, you need to just really think about things and understand things. I would say just look around and then think about what you've seen. Yeah, really spend more time doing that than I did.
Okay. All right. You're on, Linda. Please share your work.
Okay. This is a tribute section. And speaking of music, this one's called Verclair, We Miss You, B.B. King. Preach your way across the song, emotions through music acted on, from tremolo to hypnotic dance, melancholy moaning chant, feverishness without frenzy, no jittery apology, love and loss intoned, hard-hearted man or woman bemoaned, cheating man or woman disowned. An army of scales and chords, bearing dissonant musical scores, playing the devil's note, commanding legion, singing off the beat, syncopated strum, a high-pitch piercing on the air, confront right or wrong on a dare, face up to the choice and tell, angels or demons, heaven or hell. For having faced either allure, what else is there to fear? Hear a heart sing, not rotten, only torn with grief and forgotten. Feel the weight and vigor of this genre so oral. Hear what's reflected in the sonic mural. Elation, salaciousness, sensuality, the mortal coil's gravity. Call and response felt deep in skin and soul. A beat strong and true, never growing cold. The removal of scar inflicting yokes. Warbling music of the gods, rebellious enough to be outlawed. The good, the bad, take up either sword. Yet with other forms of song, blues is not at war. Merely disparate or contrasting as such, not the antithesis of other music much. A far cry from some, distant cousin of many, distinct and deviant, comparisons are plenty. But to find music incomparable to blues, you won't find any. Warm whiskey bellies on country lanes, replaced by ice and snow in freezing veins. Some buoyancy as driven theater beats of rock, like heavy metal without angst or shock. No upbeat pop, optimistic with cheer, just the human condition's atmosphere. Not folks' eternal idealistic optimism, but its prism of fair-minded liberalism. Its search for freedom matches heart. These descriptions explain in part the blues' enduring positivity and Riley's eternal legacy. That's my tribute to good old BB. And, I probably saw him in concert about 13 or 14 times in my life. I love that man.
Did he sing Lucille?
Awesome. Did he sing what?
Did he sing Lucille? Lucille. Is that his song? That's his signature song. What's his signature song called? Lucille, right?
He had to. He had to. He played on Lucille. I mean, what's he going to do, sit there and play his guitar and not call her by name? Or can you imagine what things would be going on back?
All right. Well, I didn't mean to offend him. You're serious about B.B. King. All right, continue. I'm sorry. I interrupted.
He wasn't going to offend Lucille either. I can tell you that. Boy,
all right. I interrupted. I'm sorry.
Next one's called Bowie. It's about David Bowie. I wrote this on the day he died. Frail but unswerving, his death unnerving. If we'd begged him to stay, would he, with pain and loss of dignity? Now the Starman channels Lazarus. Major Tom floats free to represent us. Okay, so that's that. And then I have one that's called Fairy Tales Exposed. I see, even with eyes closed in sleep, dishonesty. When the vow to love is taken, within the beauty of a kiss, our poetry becomes visible. He or me, the queen partner, easing us into the territory of the heart, not to be lost. The verdict of truth should speak with great care and exactitude from our caring lips. But deep sleep can teach that elapsed time does not always work in our favor. Therefore, listening to tales from either emperors or mendicants sometimes exposes the very shape of fairy tales, and I will lose all if I only believe in the merits of fantasy and not its deficits. Okay, then I have, another music. We lost another musician, Rick Ocasek of the Cars. That was one of my favorite bands in the 80s, was the Cars. And when he died, I was crushed. Born against Hitler's might, a polished scarecrow, come to fight, guarding against crow's shallow, dull calling. Mutt to Jeff, metaphorical meters and lyrics surround, deep thrusting beat and organs streamlined flow. A swirl of playful words, taking you as deep as you'll go. Thanks for bringing your shine to music's hackneyed, achromatic soundscape. Red, white, and black aphrodisiac. Good night, goodbye, new wave night. Okay, I'm not sure how familiar with the Cars, but that was kind of their color theme, was the red, white, and black. And he had these really strange lyrics, but it had to this incredible music. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to him much, you might want to check that out. This last one's called In the Days of Lenin. All satisfaction afforded in that final frontier. But here we square our shoulders, while somewhere in our vicinity, someone closes weary eyes for the last time. Those having passed, their ghost faces rising, their spots recently vacated, as new folks repeat their gestures, and God, with an allegorical flick, waves them through. They continue living with practiced eyes, and only at the end do they diminish, turning into mysterious shadows. Nothing so dire as falling through a crack by virtue of their extraordinary activities having been performed throughout their lives, within the framework of such a revolutionary thing as love. So those are my tribute poems.
All right. Thank you. As always, a beautiful,
You're welcome.
beautiful. I heard so much emotion in that set.
Yeah.
Emotion for others in terms of loss. I heard that. I felt that, to be quite honest, my friend. I felt it. And I think my first question to you is, do you think a person can be called a poet if they don't feel strong emotions?
No.
Tell me more.
That's my personal opinion. No, and I don't think that's just my opinion. I think any poets that are listening tonight are shaking their head and going, right on, Linda, that's correct. Because poetry is, just like music is emotion, poetry's rhythm and emotion. So, yeah, there's that. Yeah, I think you have to be. Now, can you write something emotional with being removed from it somewhat, so that you're working on technique and stuff like that? Yes, you can. But if in the end, when you read it, if it doesn't evoke a feeling that you were trying to get across, then it's not done well yet, and one needs to go back and revise it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It really does. I've asked that question a lot, and most people have said no. Most people have said no.
Really?
Yes. No, I mean, what you said, that you can't be a poet, potentially a poet, if you don't feel strong emotions. Most of the people that I've worked with in this forum have said that's true if you don't experience emotions.
Yes. Well, and that goes back to the whole thing about writing for yourself.
Yeah.
If I'm writing to understand the world, I am writing to understand the world, but I'm also writing to understand my reaction to the world as I perceive it. So,
when you write, are you having a conversation in your head with anybody when you write? Or are you just writing straight for the page? Does that make sense? Who are you
that makes very
thinking
good.
of?
Yeah,
Okay.
That makes very good sense. I'm having a conversation with myself at that point, because I don't, I know there are people out there that professionally, sit on the street corner at a table, and somebody will come up, can you write me a poem about a flower? And they whip it out, and I can't do that. I don't write off the cuff. I have to be very thoughtful. I have to really reflect on what it is I'm trying to say and how I'm trying to say it. I think it's really important. I know a poem is done when I've said what I want to say the way I want to say it. I mean, that's how I know that my work's done, and that involves a lot of conversation with myself.
All right. I think that's a mature and smart way to do it. I really do.
Well, thank you. I didn't call me.
Let's go back to the word. Let's go back to emotions for these last two questions. I don't know whether it's 4 or 5. I'm glad you're here. All right. When you think about writing, does it hurt you to write poetry? If not, why not?
Does it hurt me?
Yes, not literally, but figuratively. Yes.
Yeah, no, sometimes it's extremely painful, especially when I write. This one about B.B. King, I probably cried for 2 weeks, before, during, and after. I did. I loved that man. He was my favorite blues person, and believe me, I'm a blues person. So, but he was my favorite. But I've written poems about my dad. I've written poems about friends that have died. Yeah, you have to delve into all that, even if you don't want to. If you want to write a tribute or you want to get something off your chest about something, I don't automatically write. Interestingly enough, the Berclair one I didn't write for a few weeks. The Bowie one I wrote that very day, and the acoustic one I wrote that very day. I've got some others. When Tom Petty died, it was probably a week before I sat down and wrote anything. When Leonard Nimoy died, I wrote a poem that day about it. It just depends on how it hit me and my mood and everything, or at least when I say I wrote it, I mean I got started and really started laying things out. But and that's the other thing. If you're writing for yourself, I mean you're laying it out on the table there. You are absolutely laying it on the table. And it may couch some of it in metaphor, but you're laying it out on the table there.
Wow.
But then there's some other things I'm just interested.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I'm wondering, in terms of, just stay with the word hurt again, are you willing to be hurt by the poetry of others that you read? Figuratively, of course.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I've read some pieces that just broke my heart. Yeah. I mean, and there's the pieces I go, wow, person really put themselves out there. I mean, that's powerful, what they wrote. Yeah. Absolutely. Think about songs. Think about music and song lyrics. I mean, are there songs that you listen to that just crush you?
Yes.
As opposed to, somebody's writing something about bebopping down the street or something crazy like that. But I mean, there's some songs that just absolutely, wow. You are. There's a song called. There's a country western person called Jerry Jeff Walker. He wrote Mr. Bojangles.
Did he really? Now I love that song. Yeah, I love that song.
Well, of course you do, but think of the emotion that when they talk about his he's still grieving over his dog. Oh my God, you have to be dead yourself if you're not touched by those lines. And then he wrote another song called My Old Man. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if you've never heard the Nina Simone version of Mr. Bojangle, please listen to it.
Oh yeah. I think I've listened to pretty much everything she's ever done too. Yeah, that voice. Wow.
We need to talk offline, Linda.
We do.
We need to talk offline.
Really. Oh, that voice.
Okay, let's go back to the poetry concert. Give me some more.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. The next part is I call it religion and myth, which I'm trying to be careful about that because I don't want maybe esoteric or something would be better because some of this is it's kind of interesting stuff, and I don't want to have somebody say, oh, well, that's a religion or she thinks that's a myth or whatever, because that's not how I'm meaning it. So let me just read and shut up. Okay, this one's called Dreamcatcher. Call on memories to review the day, to plan, aspire to, futures seen perfectly in dreams. Draw from the mystic pool elements needed for life and to face the Godhead. This never disappointing web of power. Our guardian, we trust you to entrap our fears. Our advocate, to hold our desires. Our conciliator, to hear our entreaties, our deliverer, to secure our safety. You use all manner of transcendental paths to form our thoughts into something we can explain. Because of you and your never-ceasing watchfulness each night, Ojibwe, Spider Mother, we are gifted with each new day. Miigwech. Now, Miigwech is the Ojibwe word for thank you. So, and I do have dream catchers on my bedpost. I think those are really cool and love that whole idea. This next one's called Lazarus the Refined. The once dead Lazarus wakes, stands up, steps over the dull coins that fall from his eyes. He feels the power of his old death, which came without warning, and supposedly no remedy, as a dreamy memory. His awkwardness falls away as the vanishing heaviness, once laid upon him, becomes forgotten. He escapes the hazy straitjacket of his passing. The ratification of his death is repealed. He greets Joshua like a friend from the ages. When one helps you rise, It is one's duty to transform into a courageous yet genteel gentleman, although even as a corpse, he behaved quite well. Okay, this next one was a really fun one to write. It's called The Bone Shop, and it's creepy in a real fun kind of way. And I'll just read it, and then you can tell me if you knew what in the heck I was talking about here. Collectors lurch up a set of narrow, dark stairs. Within their chest, they feel a hot wave of desire to procure one or more of these vendables. Their stark sensations skeletons feel without their former cover, the body's framework on display, now deposed from the seats of the wealthy only by death. These were not the fallen, nor the ignored. These were those who walked grand halls in affluent mansions, ones once dressed in satin, who strode carrying sapphire handbags and pearl-handled walking sticks. Enthusiasts can spend one whole evening sifting through skulls upon which sits the sweetness of vanity. Shoppers can spend one whole evening scrutinizing the singular beauty of various limbs to find the best rarities. Some hobbyists prefer scrounging through the grouped league of broken parts in a bin, considering the detailing fatigue for the older bones, all evaluating the incontestable beauty of the eggshell and alabaster surfaces, hoping the ownership of at least one item may bring a bit of luck toward accruing their own prosperity. And that's that one. And I had fun writing that one because I thought, okay, there's all these bones out there, of all these poor people and, paupers' graveyards and everything. What if you took bones of all these rich people and you put them in a shop and people thought they could buy them and, increase their own wealth through that? It was just kind of an interesting concept. I know there's something wrong with me. What can I say? I had fun with that one. Okay, this next one is called The Only Letter from Ultima Thule. And Ultima Thule is that place out beyond the borders of that which exists. It's a mythical place. But supposedly there was this one letter that came from there. In this realm beyond borders of the known world, here the ghosts of the dead linger, and thoughts of tomorrow have no place. Ever-changing cloud patterns do not exist. Only colorless blankets of billowed vapor hang as a dead overhead canopy which blocks the stars. Vessels of dead lilies line paths, and nearby a once merry maypole sags, its banners lackluster, somber, and torn. Dark drabness and sterility are masters here. All objects, whether matter or spirit, wear light gray surfaces, flat, without any matted texture. There's no moving forward. There's no going somewhere new. And if you linger, you will become like this place is. Creation past this point will be a challenge never met. Ultima Thule stands at the top of the world as the place over which explorers trip while seeking somewhere greater than where they came from.
Wow.
So that's that one. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. You group those poems for a reason. Am I correct?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yes.
What is the purpose of that particular set? What are you trying to say?
The purpose of this set is just looking at some beliefs, looking at some belief systems, and thinking about how I react to them. When I first read about Ultima Thule, I thought, okay, that sounds like kind of an interesting place. I wonder what it would be like. Here again, we're going back to those what ifs. Most of my ones that fall in this category, except for the Dreamcatcher, that could have gone under tribute. Or kind of the what ifs, what if this, what if that, and so that's kind of where I went with that. Same with the Bone Shop, what if there was a shop like that where people could go, and get rich people's skeletons or bones.
What, Linda, my friend, would you potentially give up to be a better writer? And I'm not saying that you're not. That's just the question.
No,
the question.
No, I'm thinking that's good. That's a really good question too. What would I give up? I think I would give up the maybe not the thought. It's not even really a belief, but I'll use the word belief.
Mm-hmm.
I'd give up the belief that there's certain things I couldn't write about. I think I'd give that up. I realize I don't have a lot of the experiences that that other people have had, and which again is another reason I write for myself. But I'm thinking, since I do tend to go into that what if vein, I'm thinking I can think, okay, what if I were, what if I were this or that? As a matter of fact, I wrote a poem called "Digging the Day," and it's about a male beatnik back in the day. And, of course, he's taking drugs and he's sleeping with women. He's doing all this stuff. And, I don't do all that. But I wrote as if I were him and the kind of day that he's having. And so I think you have to just put aside the fact that there's nothing you can't write about if you put your mind to it.
All right. That first poem that you wrote in that particular set dealt with a spiritual bent. I think I'm correct with that. And what I want to know is, tell me about a poem that you've written that you're very, very proud of, but were afraid to share it due to the possibility of misinterpretation. Oh, gosh. Is that the one?
That's a really good question, too. I'm trying to think. I think
because I know you prefaced the first poem that you shared, but you wanted people to not misunderstand it. That's why I asked that question.
Right. Not misunderstand it. I don't know other than that's a really good question. Gosh, I really don't have an answer for you right off the top of my head. I know I have some, but I can't think of them right now. And that you're absolutely right. I think every poet has those that might be misinterpreted. I try to be very careful writing about race because I don't want that to be misinterpreted. I have written a couple of poems about race. I wrote one called "She's Just Like Me," and it's about a set of dolls, and the dolls look different, based on characteristics. And I had some characteristics in there. I remember writing about the hair of the black doll and the coiling of the hair. But the way I wrote it, I thought was really cool. It came out, it was kind of, like a coil, like in a galaxy. It's like like each individual hair is like a galaxy within itself. You can imagine all these brilliant galaxies, in this little girl's head. And then, excuse me, I'm sorry. And then there was a Native American doll in there, and I try to be really careful with cultural things and not overstep. Not think I know something when I don't.
Right.
Try and comment on the way somebody looks and have it misinterpreted. I really don't think on that one that they would. I don't think that particular one they would. But yeah.
Well, that's a very honest answer, and I appreciate you sharing it the way that you did. Let's continue with the poetry concert. Let's continue with the concert.
Okay. All right. Let's see. We'll go to the last section here, which is called the peace section. Now, doesn't mean it's, all, again, you can call it whatever you want when we're all done with it. This one's called Lakeside Drive. Part of London has sinned at Lakeside Drive, say some outside of it. This one street with provincial distinction in this valuable world. Inside, once past the sign, resembling carved and engraved bone, at the entrance, one can discover that a lack of reliance on modern technology will still allow a place to make great human progress. Along this wide street, these residents worship a subroutine, not of computers, but of a sanctified concord of declared harmony between people, groups, races. The only apparatus sustaining their progress, and expertise of handiness, versatility, respect, and love. The reverse significance of data processing, the process of having a pragmatic outlook while using both the head and the heart. The denizens on this map trust no inept theist rabble. They trust only the preservation of unchastened optimism and the flame of level temperament, and they balance the optic as neighbors shaking hands with courtesy. There's no fallacious brag about Lakeside Drive. It simply exists as a beacon of hope for a more appropriate now. And that's Lakeside Drive.
Are you ready for me?
And that's
okay. You're not ready for me. Okay. The concert continues. Am I correct?
Yes. Were you able to hear Lakeside Drive?
Yes, I was. It's beautiful. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I was.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Absolutely. And that's another one of those what ifs. But here again, kind of tying those pieces together. This was called The Temple at Twilight. The Temple at Twilight. Soft the evening presses in. No squeeze, just gentle pressure. The susurration of the fountain heard with open ears. The shimmer of light from candles' glow, seen with open eyes. That soft embrace felt with an open heart, as a hug given tenderly by all the angels you can name. Now, see, that one could have very well gone under the, quote, religion myth. This is why I'm trying to be careful and not, categorize them too specifically, kind of put them in big categories. We doing okay on time here?
No, I don't.
Are we doing okay on time?
No, I don't. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm asking you, are we okay on time? We still have time?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I thought you said Canton, like C-A-N or C-O-N-T-O-N. I was like, no, is that a city in China? I don't know. All right. We have time. We have all the time in the world. All the time. So don't worry about the time. I control it, all right?
This is probably the best one that we've done together. This is the most fun. This is the best. Okay, this one's called When That Old Bridge Falls Down. We'll crawl up from the everlasting dense dark through a veiled hole, friending shadows and rocks in the bid to connect with who is now left when that old bridge falls down. When war is done, when some forms of flesh have survived transmutation, how we now appear, pale and bestial, will be at odds with what is swirling within our beautiful hearts when that old bridge falls down. To see what's crumbled, this brave new world, our inheritance, to know that to rebuild will take new action, new thoughts, to feel inside that underground days must come to an end, to no longer look at others as if a wide river divides us, to understand bridges are meant to be links, not scaffolds used to stage rifts, when that old bridge falls down. Okay, so that's that one. This next one's a pretty new one. It's called When Writing Heals. It might give you a little more insight into my writing. Each day has a mass of memories. I might have one bad hour with pain that hurts, pain that changes. Time is free, but not mine to keep. Therefore, with what time I am lent, I want to hold my own pen. I can never be sure of time, so I'll let emotion find words and tell myself that happiness is the way to think. Okay, so that might give you a little more insight into what we've been talking about as far as how I write and how I think about what I write.
All right.
Okay, the last one that I have here, and if we need others, I can find them. Oh, I have one more. Okay, it's called The Memory of the Words of Doves. Kind words leave no scars. Instead, they leave caresses on the memory of the words of doves. Beautiful feathers sent by friends, soft as a bed of creamy blossoms. We all remember what happened years ago, the easy way some people spoke to us and kept their oaths. Yesterdays, when every dove lent their voices to the glory of the world, and tenderness and peace brought beauty. So for today, I wish you peace. Okay, so that's the end of that one.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
You're
Thank you. What I want to know, my friend, you've written books, you've shared your work in different places. Do you think you were meant to be a poet?
Do I think I'm meant to be? Oh, absolutely.
Yes. Do you think you're meant to be a poet? That you were meant to be a poet?
Yes, I'm meant. Yes, I need to be a poet. That's something I need to do. Yes, I have a burning desire to be a poet. Not necessarily to be a famous, published, money-grubbing person, but someone that needs to get their words out there and whatever way I can. But more than that, again, Zach, I need to write for myself. So, yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, what surprises you about being a poet?
I think that's a very good question. Surprises.
If anything.
It's the ease with which sometimes poems come and sometimes they don't. And by that, I don't mean that things like Claire, where I had to really, or Maud's Dancing, where I really had to go back and kind of, juxtapose words and things like that. Claire, I spent a lot of time on, just what is the difference between blues and rock and heavy metal and folk and all this, but to put it in, in a way that people, that people might understand it. It wasn't hard to write. It just took time to write. But I think what surprises me is sometimes some things are a lot harder to write than other things. Not necessarily time-consuming, just harder.
I understand. I promised 5 sets when we started. Can you share 2 more? That would make it 5 sets.
Yes.
What to close out the show?
I will share
the concert.
Yeah, I will share 2 out of my nature one. Let me see. Let me find the shorter ones here. Okay, Kite Sigh, I'll share. The dimming of those strange stars brings the day, as our own familiar orb slowly advances upwards like a kite, her string let out gently by an unknown hand, her periphery disturbed only by fire's touch. Yet one day she'll be old and lame. Getting up will be harder, the dimensions of that kite having shrunk. Her morning's eye turned cloudy, that same eye turning back toward our sphere without ever again looking at us. Now that's obviously about the sun. Someday our sun's going to burn out. I think you'll like this last one. It's shorter, but it's also, we were talking about the prairie and everything since I'm in Kansas. This one's called Open Spaces. It feels great to be out from under rolling carpets of steel and stone. I'm standing with outline anonymity, breathing in the glory of solitude, enjoying the simple subtraction of so much weight from my shoulders. It's so easy to forestall deep sorrow here while feeling the deepening rumble of a wet, thunderous afternoon within my chest. the wind battering from all sides, turning my hair like the Medusa, as I wait for the open spaces and the nighttime canvas of midnight blue to be painted across the sky.
Wow.
Okay,
wow.
So those are...
All right. As you think about your book, what piece of advice would you give to your readers, if any? If they pick up Spica's frequency, what advice would you give them?
My advice would be to read the foreword, because there are some illustrations in that book, and they might look at the illustration and go, what in the blazes is this? Whereas if they read the foreword, it kind of explains that whole process. I've had this recurring dream since I was, well, I'm not going to attribute it to the moon landing, but the day after the moon landing, I had the first one. And there's a mysterious corridor, and that poem is in the book. Before they read that whole section about the there and the then, you know, that whole what if section. The first poem is called Mysterious Corridor. I suggest they read that one first so they understand what my whole thinking is about that whole process of things that could be and things that seem to be, and maybe they are, but maybe they're not. I really don't think this place exists except in my mind, but it's a place that I always go back to. I mean, you know, some people have, I don't know if you ever have any recurring dreams that you've had throughout your life, but this is one of 5 different ones that I've had. I'm in this mysterious corridor, and there's a certain thing, and there are these creatures, and they're not in cages, but they're in, and there's nothing keeping them in there. They're in an open space, but they're swirling in this mist. And as they go down this hallway, there's these different compartments that have these creatures in them, and it's taken me years to see what some of them actually look like. And I'm not a very good artist, but, you know, and I only see bits and pieces, but I've done some drawings based on what I've seen of these creatures. And I've given them all names, you know, because I've seen them enough all these years. And the list has grown significantly. I don't always start back at the beginning. You know, I kind of move down the corridor as we're going along. But there's this one creature that is not in a compartment, and I don't know. I don't know what this means, except in terms of, you know, some psychological disorder or something that I have. But I call him the tapping man. It's like he has tap shoes on. He's running around the perimeter of this entire area, and I can hear him coming up, you know, along. Of course, he's not right next to me, but, you know, I can hear him on the outside. And then, you know, I can hear him kind of go off, and then I can hear him coming down the other side. It's a really, really interesting, fascinating dream. So, you know, it's something that somebody might want to look at, maybe to see if I need to be committed or something. I don't know.
All right. Where can listeners find your work, my friend? Where can they find your work?
They can find my work at several places. One of the best places to find they can find my work on Amazon. They can find my Soma Publishing work at somapublishing.com.
All right. How can listeners stay in touch? I couldn't hear you. I couldn't hear what you were saying in terms of. I heard Amazon, then I heard one more, but I didn't hear the third one.
That's okay. Well, there's Linda on Facebook. There's Linda's poetry page. Linda Imbler Poet is what it's called. It's a page on Facebook, Linda Imbler Poet, and then this one here, Linda's Poetry Blog.blogspot.com, and I'll say that one again, Linda's Poetry Blogspot.com, and that one's neat because I've got anything that's been published pretty much is on there. I've got a list of publications that are coming. I've got all the radio shows on there. I've got all my interviews on there. I mean, I have testimonials from readers on there. Basically, anything you would want to know about me and my writing is on there, and that's a Google page, so people can get a hold of me on that, or, through Facebook. I'm also on Instagram at #ImblerPoet, so that people can get a hold of me there. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
The last question, I know you're ready to leave. What's next for you? What's next for you, my friend? Where do you go from here?
Okay, okay, I hope you're sitting down so that you can hear this.
Yes, I am.
I have 4 books in the pipeline.
Oh.
No, I know they'll roll out, over the next couple of years. And they're not set in stone, so I may have some changes. I may add or subtract a poem here or there. One I'll publish, one Soma will publish, one I'll publish. One I kind of alternate with Mark on, publishing my own work, and he'll publish, the ebooks. One's called Doubt and Truth, and every poem has to do with those kind of things. One is called Viewpoints While in Rome, and it's kind of an interesting book because I took maxims, Latin sayings, and wrote a poem about my reaction to that saying. And then I've got one called Octave, which is actually I probably shouldn't talk about this one too much because this one I'm putting together for somebody.
All right.
And that's all I'm going to say about it. And then I've got one called 12th month, 12th like in 12th Night from Shakespeare, but it's not about Shakespeare. Called 12th Month, and it's basically the poems are divided into heart, mind, and soul poems. But there's a heart, mind, and soul poem for January, one for February. So, there's 36 poems there when you're all done. And then I'm still working on, I've got a little niece who's working on the illustrations for the Princess and the Frog. She's doing the illustrations for that. So children's poem that I wrote. It's going to be a little children's book. So, I've got stuff in the pipeline.
You've got stuff in the pipeline. You're very prolific. I thank you for participating in the poetry concert, and I think you deserve a round of applause. I don't think as poets we receive enough applause for all the work that we do. And the hard work, putting ourselves out there. So that was for you, Linda.
Yes.
All right?
Well, thank you. That is very cool. I'm very touched. That's wonderful. I know you're going to give one to all your future readers. I think they deserve it too. Absolutely. And
well, you're the first one. You're the first one that I played it for, so you're my guinea pig in a sense. So thank you. All right.
I've been called worse, Michael.
We do have someone who's been on the line. I think they may want to ask you a question. Is that all right? I know it's time to close up. Okay, let's bring this person on. Area code 630. The first 3 numbers are 467. You're on the air with Linda. Good evening.
Good evening. How's Linda doing from that little
prairie place
out there by the guitar, zone?
Linda is doing great. We're working on number 10.
I know you do such a great job of polishing and doing those enamels and what other fancy stuff. And all those clamps you use to keep everything in place. I'm so impressed.
Oh, yeah.
Linda's Michael Lee Johnson. How you doing?
Yes, I recognize you. Thank you for calling, and I appreciate that. No, I recognize your voice. You sound really good.
Well, you know what? You're just a special person. You've been very supportive of me for years. So when I see your name pop up and your face pop up, especially when it's with Michael Anthony, Ingram.
Oh wow!
I've got to get on board because Michael is one of the nicest, sharpest. How do I say it? Humbly introspective questionnaire person I've ever heard before.
He's one of my favorite people in the entire world. So
thank you,
don't
Michael.
have to tell me
my namesake. Thank you.
By the way, I can say this here because I'm not on Facebook. As probably both of you know, I've been banned on Facebook. It's a long story, but to make it really brief, I had a severe auto accident back October 2nd of last year, and I'm still on a walker. A lot of things going on. My condo's being sold, etc. But the bottom line is, when I was in rehab, I basically wanted to be to stay in touch with the 5 or 6 Facebook poetry groups that I administer, and I was not able to. I was not able to retrieve my password from my original ID from my home computer because I was in rehab, and I don't normally use handheld devices. So I established a new account in rehab. I went home finally, and all of a sudden they saw a cell phone handheld device and my computer standalone being used in the same physical location. And quote, for my own safety, they said, "We are going to ban your account." So, I've been, I'm very serious. That's what happened.
Yeah.
And and trying to get back on once you've been banned. I'm not talking about being in jail, Facebook jail.
Yeah.
Once you have been permanently banned, it's absolute hell. They want you to show them your driver's license. Oh, but you're not sending it in the right format. It's not the right size. It's not enough. We need to have a real ID, or we need to have your birth certificate. We need to have your passport. We need to have and most of these things I'm just not able to get at this point where I'm at in my rehabilitation.
Sure.
So, so I snuck in privately under the name of
don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody.
No,
keep it to yourself.
Don't tell anybody. We know.
Don't tell anybody.
We know.
You never know who's listening.
I'm Jesse Lee Michaels now, okay, for a while on Facebook.
All right. Well,
as a
you're the
pen
one
name.
who spilled the beans.
But I'm worried because some of the people know me so well that I'm afraid to go say, "Oh, Jesse Lee Michaels. Oh, that's Michael Lee Johnson." And the fact of the matter is Facebook picks up on all these communications through their algorithms.
Yeah.
So I could very easily be banned right back out. But anyway, listen, that's neither here nor there. I'm sitting here listening to the busybody of Linda. My God, kid, how many things do you have in your pipeline? It's almost overwhelming.
I don't sleep a lot.
I don't think you do either, because it's amazing. But, Michael, this is one of the most supportive ladies in poetry, right? Contemporary poetry.
Yes, I know she is.
She's a wonderful person, supportive of others the best she can, and being responsible while she does it.
Yes.
So anyway, I'll let you guys go. I just
all right. Thank you, sir. So good to hear from you. So good to hear from you.
Yeah.
All right. Wish you the best.
I don't know if you guys have my email or not, but it's promomanusa@gmail.com.
I have it. Okay, I'll send you something.
Feel free to contact
just some words of encouragement.
I need to build alternatives to Facebook. I'm on Instagram, and I think Linda and I may have connected there. But the bottom line is 90% of all social media is owned by Facebook.
Wow.
And all the significant ones. And if they don't own it, they will purchase it out to kill the competition. And with Facebook, it is mostly ran by algorithms and very few staff. And it's very, very difficult. Here's the lesson learned. If you don't own it, where you've invested your life, don't go there. The bottom line is Facebook can cancel your life out in a heartbeat. And there's nothing you can do about it. And it's very difficult once they decide to ban you for whatever reason they come up with. I never did anything wrong except support my poets. Over 15 years, I built those platforms, over 33,500 members. And all of a sudden, I'm just gone. It's pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, Michael, on that note, we need to close out, my friend.
Yes.
Yes, we.
Yes,
now,
it's
listen,
been
Michael,
beautiful...
real quickly, how are you going over your 60 minutes? I noticed you're over that.
I know. It's a secret. It's a secret.
No, it's
I don't
not.
need to tell
you know what
anybody.
I think it is, Michael? I think ever since your mother passed, I think
Yes.
you just figured out, hey, you know what? Life is short.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
and
is.
because I was really in tune with your mother passing. That was heartbreaking.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. Well,
but anyway,
everybody.
All right.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, everybody. Take
Block
care,
me.
Michael.
Yes.
Yes. All right. To all the listeners, it was a fantastic program, and I'm so glad you joined me every week. So as I share with you at the end of this program, I always say, let poetry ring. Good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night,
Michael.
Good night, Michael.
Good night, Linda.
Good night now.
All right.
Bye now. Bye-bye.
Quintessential Listening, Poetry Online Radio, is available on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. You can also check out the website at QLPOR.com.